So now that we've been introduced into Dreamweaver, we're going to go ahead and make our first HTML file. So we're going to be able to do this a couple different ways. Number one, we can just hit create new here, or go to file and new. All of these different ways. So essentially, we need to create an HTML file, a hypertext markup language file. That's what you view when you go to a website is an HTML file usually. So we're going to go ahead and view an HTML file. So I'm going to hit create new, and it's going to bring up this dialog box where I can create a new document. I can start with a template, or I can use a whole site template. We're going to create from scratch. We're going to create new because creating from scratch and doing it yourself is going to help you a lot. So that way you can understand what happens when you start using templates and other things. Because if you don't have the base understanding, you really can't understand what you're looking at when you use templates and stuff. So the first thing you get to pick is your document type. You've got HTML, CSS, and then you can see there's a ton more document types. And if you go into Digital Design 2, we'll learn JavaScript as well. But for now, we're just going to do an HTML file. Over here, you can set up a framework of having attaching a CSS file, choosing a different doc type, but HTML5 is the most up-to-date one, so we're going to leave it at that, and then giving the document a title. Now, what this means is when you go to a web page, like when I go to cnn.com, is I'm viewing this web page, it looks great, but up here at the top, there's actually what's called a title. And if I hover over this tab up at the top, this website's title is CNN Breaking News, Latest News and Videos. If I go to the business tab, you'll see that it'll change to business news - latest headlines on CNN business - CNN. So the title changes for every single page. And we're just specifying our home page here. So I'm going to put my last name and I'm putting notes website. Okay, we could then attach a CSS here. Now, this is an important note. If you look at your code pen, you've got HTML coding and then you've got CSS. This is in a totally separate file usually. Like you've got an HTML file and then a CSS file and you make them talk to each other. But we're going to show you how to put it inside the HTML, then inside the file, and then outside in its own. So normally what would happen is if you had a CSS already created, you could attach that here, but we don't have that at this point, so we're going to leave that alone. And the last thing is to build from Photoshop comps. This is kind of a cool feature, way above what we're doing right now, but essentially in the world of web design, usually if you're in a big firm or you're in a larger firm, you have a website developer, and then you have the designer. And the designer builds like a whole mock-up in Photoshop, splices it up, and then sends it off to the coder, the developer, and they can import those into Dreamweaver and just build on top of these images. It's a pretty cool feature. But for now, we're going to leave that because we definitely don't have that. So we're going to go ahead and hit create, and that'll create our HTML file. Your HTML file will show the coding at the bottom and the preview up at the top. It's going to take you through some other things. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. But one thing that's important is it has not saved yet. I've got an untitled one and a little asterisk. This is very familiar when it comes to Photoshop and Illustrator doing the same things. So I'm going to save this file. The homepage of every single website ever made is called index.html. Every website. Index.html. So although when I go to cnn.com and I'm viewing their homepage, I am actually viewing what's called an index file, index.html. We can't see that. It's got a name of cnn.com, all these things. There's a lot of features that are happening in the background, but index.html is what this file is called. And that's a default of web coding, because when I go to cnn.com, it's going to the server and it's saying, hey, I want to view your website. And by default, the computer is always going to bring back index.html. So we are going to go ahead and save this, go File, Save As, and I'm going to be in my Notes website folder and I'm going to name it Index. I don't need to add the .html because you can see it's going to make it an HTML file for a lot of different reasons. One, we made an HTML file when we selected it. But two, we also have a doc type of HTML and HTML code here. And you can see now it's saved as index.html.